my guest today, Coach Alexa Peterson, a team coach member of the Hitting Vault, also played professionally, was an NCAA All-American. Alexa, thanks for being with us this morning, and we're doing our first live Q&A across all channels. So right now, hopefully we're broadcasting on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, you name it, and we are doing it this morning live Q&A. So make sure you get your questions in this morning. If you are tuning in, because we are broadcasting across all channels, we're going to see how this goes with Q&A. So if you're tuning in, let us know you're tuning in. One of my favorite things I really love about doing these live things is seeing where you guys are tuning in from. So if you are tuning in, get your questions ready about hitting. Today's Q&A is strictly about hitting. But let me know where you're tuning in from. Again, I love seeing the people from across the country. Sometimes we get some international folks. So if you're tuning in, let us know where you're tuning in from and get your questions in for today's Q&A. So Alexa, let's kick it off. The first question, and I'm going to leave this one for you. Even though it's a little bit of a wide question, is what is hip hinge and why is it important?
That is a great question. I'd say that's probably one of the most important pieces of that a lot of hitters don't understand and that coaches don't understand how to teach. But hip hinge is basically when you stride out and get to launch position, which is when your front heel hits, we want to make sure that you're hinged at your hip. So you're angled over. Let me just angle this down so I can kind of show you. So rather than being here when you stride out and you're really upright and tall, so let's go back this way, upright and tall like this. Oh, I have a bat too. So striding out and being upright and tall, this is not having very much hip hinge. Hip hinge is where your eyes, I like to say your eyes are over your toes. So we want to be in this position when our front heel hits, somewhere kind of in this range, because as you start to go towards the ball, it helps you stay on plane with the pitch, even though your hips are opening up. If you don't have any hip hinge, when you stride forward, when you start to turn your hips, this all works together and works outside and around the ball. So, depending on how you start determines on how much hip hinge you need to create. So let's say that I start really tall and upright. That means that I have to create more hip hinge when I start going into my load and going forward, versus if I already start like this, then I don't have to really create too much more.
Great point. Yeah, hip hinge is really important, and it's really important for being able to maintain your posture throughout your swing. And so a lot of times we get hitters that get to a good hip hinge, and as they begin swinging, they lose their posture, and so it's really important as well for that. So again, thanks everybody for tuning in this morning. We're live across all channels. If you want to get your questions in though, go to facebook.com/The Hitting Vault. That's where I'm seeing all the comments this morning. So if you have any questions, get them into there. If you're on Twitter or LinkedIn or YouTube this morning, I can't see your comments on the section. I apologize. We're still working out some kinks on the live thing, but on facebook.com/Coach Lisle or facebook.com/The Hitting Vault, that's where we are live talking hitting this morning with professional player and former All-American Alexa Peterson. Let's get to our next question this morning. So the next question is it okay for a hitter to not step straight? And that's a great question. I think, I try to think of a lot of examples. Baseball wise, you've got Chris Davis, you've got a few others who kind of step in the bucket or open up when they stride a little bit. The biggest key to it really has to do with the shoulders and the pelvis. And if those things are opening up as the hitter is opening up, it makes it really difficult if they lose their direction. And so I'm not a huge fan of it. I think there's people who, and Alexa, I think you can speak this too, like in regards to their pelvis, like, it helps them to open up a little bit, and there are causes for it. I'm not a huge fan of it, but if you can keep your shoulders closed, your pelvis and torso closed a little bit more, when you get to that position, it's a lot easier to do that. I'm trying to think of some softball players. I want to say Stacey May Johnson, one of the greatest power hitters of all time. She steps in the bucket big time, huge step open, and probably has the most home runs of any softball player ever. So I'm sure there's a few others. Anything you would add to that?
Nuveman. Did you mean
Who's that?
Stacy Nuveman? Stacy Nuveman? Is that who
Stacy,
you're?
yeah, Stacy definitely did. Anything you would add to? Is it okay for a hitter to not step straight?
Yeah. I would say, well, first off, I'm gonna just go back to hip hinge because just to kind of explain what you're showing. So when so hitters that step open, when they step open like this, that's when they tend to lose that shoulder direction you're talking about. So they step open this way. So we want to make sure if they're stepping open that they're keeping this down and in, not stepping with the shoulder and going open like that. But like Jocelyn Allo, she plays for Oklahoma right now. She's a great example of a softball hitter that steps open. And then also like stepping closed. There's some hitters that are successful stepping closed, a couple inches or so. But yeah.
Yeah, and again, like we see a lot of hitters that step really closed. They scissor kick a little bit more, creating some space that way. So again, both of those things, stepping really close or stepping open, can be okay. It's something you have to kind of keep an eye on and have some knowledge about because that can be a problem. So the next question we've got, Jake asks, is it bad to wrap the bat behind your head? And I will tell you, there's some major leaguers. Carlos Gonzalez is someone I think about who really bat wraps. The problem with bat wrapping, the problem that we have with bat wrapping is that once you get the bat behind your head, in order for you to have good direction or try to get to the ball, you're most likely going to try to create space by doing this. And so by doing this and getting around the ball to try to get that, you're losing posture. You do a lot of things not good to get the bat. And the knob's going to want to go from here around, and it creates this circular swing path and not very vertical. It can be very challenging. There are, again, like that's the one thing I love about hitting that people are realizing in 2020 and 2021 versus 10 years ago is there's not just one way. There are people who bat wrap and have success and make millions of dollars and are all Americans. And so it's something that, again, if you have a lot of success with it, and hey, maybe that works for you, but for most people, when they bat wrap, the problem is that their bat path is going to be around. I always ask kids, living in California, we've got In-N-Out Burger, so I always tell kids, this bat path is what we call in and out. It goes in and out of the zone really quickly because of the bat wrap and the round, and we lose our posture. So that's one of the biggest issues with bat wrap, and why we really work on keeping this bat more vertical. I always tell hitters, kind of having it at the top of their helmet. And that way, we don't want it to get behind the helmet. We want it to be kind of over. It can even be in front of the helmet a little bit. Anything you would add to bat wrap on that, Alexa?
No, I think you kind of covered it all. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. The next question is, what are some free ways to practice vision training? And in the hitting vault, we are partners with Max BP, who shoots those little mini golf balls, and we are partners with Win Reality, which is an incredible program. There's also some great ones out there like Game Sense that cost money. But what are some free ways we can practice vision training? I'll let you have this one, Alexa.
One of my favorite ones that I do with my kids is I get some tennis balls and I have a colored dot on them using like red, green, and black, about the size of maybe a quarter. I'll draw a circle on either side of the tennis ball, and then you can toss it to them, and then they have to call out what color is coming at them before they make contact point. And when they're little and they're trying to just starting out, you can have them, just try to call it after contact point, but the goal should be able to call it before contact point. And so that's a really good one to do. I also will have, you can kind of, level it up. You can use regular softballs, or you can continue with the tennis balls, and you could say, hey, you're only going to hit the inside pitches and you're going to watch all the outside pitches. And they have to swing at the inside pitches as long as they're strikes. But it kind of helps them to have to like decide. They have to pick up the pitch really early. And so those are kind of two big ones that I like to use with hitters. That's easy, that they can even just do those at home.
Yeah, those are really good. Okay, we're going to keep firing away on this. We've got 30 minutes this morning. We're 10 minutes in, and there's a bunch of questions piling up, so I'm going to get to them. Let's see here. The next question. Let's see here. Like I said, we're still navigating these questions here. Here's a question. It's kind of a trick question, in my opinion. What is a good drill, or how do I stop my kid from dropping their back shoulder? And so I'll tell you, at the Division I level last year, I had a player who very good hitter, and in the first week of working with me, she's like, "Hey, coach, I was always told not to drop my back shoulder. You're telling me to drop my back shoulder. I'm really confused." And so the terminology and language is really important, right? And so we hear about kids or parents, coaches, they use the term "don't drop your back shoulder." I'm a big fan of dropping our back shoulder. We talk about it all the time, and I think it's a good thing. But let's talk about what is the actual definition of that. And so I think for a lot of coaches or parents, when they are talking about dropping the back shoulder, and at least from my standpoint, that it's bad, is when we drop the back shoulder in the load or the stride process. So when we're loading or when we're striding, we want to have this shoulder plane where my front shoulder is slightly below my back shoulder, and we want that to happen. But once the heel drops and we're ready to swing, we want that to change. And we talk about side bend. We use the terminology "rock the baby" a lot, and so understanding that when it comes to dropping your back shoulder, we want that back shoulder to drop. We want you to create some posture and some side bend, and to be able to get the ball on a nice line drive. We don't want our shoulders to stay square. We don't want to keep our front shoulder down throughout the swing. But we do not want that back shoulder to drop before launch position, and specifically in the load and stride process. And what happens with a lot of young hitters is that when they're striding, they start dropping that back shoulder and I use the term a lot, collapse their backside. And so they're collapsing their backside as they're striding, and that's a problem. So if I know you work with a lot of young hitters too, Alexa, if a parent says to hey, my kid's coach says that he's dropping his back shoulder, how do you like to address that with parents and hitters?
Well, at first I try to really just help the kid understand like what the coach is trying to say, because a lot of coaches will see things in the swing that don't look right, but they don't really understand how to help it and how to explain it well to the kids. So I kind of talk with my kids about, like, okay, what is your coach saying? Like, oh, he's saying that I'm pulling my head. I need to keep my front shoulder in. So we talk about what he's probably meaning, and what that means is kind of going back to hip hinge. If you're a hitter that strides out and you have no hip hinge and you immediately go like this, coaches will see that and will say, okay, that front shoulder's flying out. You need to keep your front shoulder in, which is one thing I was told growing up. But then I literally kept my shoulder closed. I was trying to not rotate, and that's incorrect. So what I try to do is teach kids to like translate what the coach is seeing something. Let's take what they're saying and know that they see it, but let's translate it to what they're actually meaning and how it can help. So like for me, once I learned, like, oh, hip hinge, that's what's helping keep my shoulder in, but I still need to rotate all the way. So I would say the same thing, for that kid that's, we don't want to not drop the back shoulder. It's just a matter of when does it drop. So the coach is probably seeing this as they stride forward, but that doesn't mean we just go like this. It means we stride forward, get the front shoulder slightly lower, and then drop the back shoulder.
Nice. All right, so if you're just tuning in right now, it is 10:13 a.m. Pacific time, and we are live across Facebook, Twitter, and some other places right now, including YouTube. So get your questions in. Again, we want to hear from you. Where are you tuning in from? And get your questions in. Anything about hitting that you want to get across. This morning's Q&A, we're going to go till 10:30, which is about 16 more minutes. So get your Q&A in, and appreciate everybody tuning in. Someone asks, what is the best drill for bat wrap? And, we have a bunch of drills in the vault that address that. I think, to me, one of the easiest drills that I like to do from a visual standpoint for a kid that I learned from one of my mentors is I like to tie a string or a piece of yarn from the barrel down. And I should have brought a bat this morning, but a piece of string from the barrel down, and I tape it around it so it's hanging. Yep. And then for a young hitter, they know that string should be touching their face or in front of their face. The string shouldn't get behind their head. It's just a fun visual way for them to feel and see that string will tell them. So I like our hitters to make sure they can feel that string in front of their face, or kind of here, not behind them. We don't want that string to ever get behind them until they swing. So that's one of the ways. Another drill that learned from back in the day, I call it the show the O drill. Show the O drill. So if I'm facing the pitcher that way, I'm going to show the pitcher my O here when I load, and kind of just over exaggerate a barrel tip or something like that. We have a couple of other drills in the vault that do that. But as I'm throwing front toss to the hitter, I might say, "Show me your O," and I'll just have the hitter show their O of their arms to the hitter, and just kind of just over exaggerate the feel of getting the barrel in front of them. So those are just a couple of ways that we attack bat wrap. Anything else you'd add to that?
I was gonna say, it's not to say that like they have to swing like that every time, but a lot of drills that we need to do are to help over exaggerate movement. So then hitters, when they get to their happy medium, they'll have the right amount. But show the O drill, that's literally a drill to over exaggerate that movement. Doesn't mean every kid needs to be hitting like this with that much barrel tip going forward.
Correct. Yeah, a lot of times when we exaggerate moves, it's specifically to help a hitter, especially a young hitter, to feel what it feels like to be able to kind of go to the limits of what they're capable of doing. Same with the leg kick or anything else we do. It's fun to see just their athleticism and how far, and it's a good way to teach feel or a muscle pattern or something like that. So let's see. Nick asks, if a kid seems to be late on pitches, do you have a good drill to fix this? And I'll tell you, like, my approach when it comes to that is pretty simple. For me, if a kid is late all the time, I'm gonna speed up their pitches. I'm gonna kind of force that environment a little bit to do different things. But I'm also going to spend some time figuring out why are they late. Like, are they starting their swing late? Are they getting their foot down late? Is there something going on in their swing? Like, at the base, I want to find out what's the actual thing going on. But a lot of times, it's just talking about timing and talking about over exaggerating. Something Alexa played at the University of Oregon. That's where we met when I was coaching there. And Coach White actually used to do something where he would tell hitters, right-handed hitters who were late, to pull the ball into the third base dugout and just over exaggerate, be really early. So he would use this verbal cue of be super early and try to hit the ball into the third base dugout. And that was kind of just an external visual cue. And I've always liked that. I always thought, like, in the cages too, okay, hey, you're late. Do me a favor, hit one to the third base, or hit one down the third baseline foul or in the third base dugout. And sometimes hitters are like, okay, I'll try to do that. And they get way too early and they do that. And we try to find the happy medium. Lex, anything else you would kind of work with a young hitter that is late all the time?
Yeah, sometimes being late can be dependent on they just don't really have a load. So take some video of your kid's load. If they're in their starting stance like this and they just go forward to the ball, sometimes that movement is going to make them like have that ball jump on them really quick. So make sure that they have a slow load where their barrel's working more vertical, their front shoulder's working down and in, they pick up and then they go fast. So going slow to fast, and even saying that out loud, saying slow, fast as they're hitting, will help them kind of get that tempo right. And they'll kind of realize, oh, like I actually can't just rush and go at the ball really fast. I need to have a little bit of smooth transition to going into the swing.
That's great. All right, we got a bunch of questions here, so I'm going to kind of pile some more on you here. This is a good one for you, Alex. I feel like you address this a lot with a lot of younger kids. What is a good drill to keep the back elbow from leaking down? So I don't see how you address that. And I'm not entirely sure what Justin means by the back elbow leaking down. I think maybe he's talking just about bat drag, or maybe in the stride dropping a little bit. So Justin, if you want to expand on that, feel free. But anything that when you have hitters that maybe in their load or stride process, back elbow from leaking down, maybe that's what he's talking about there.
Yeah, one of my favorite drills that I started doing with some kids. Let's use this. This is a soccer ball, so I wouldn't really recommend using this. They have balls that are more soft and squishy than this, but this is actually about the right size. So what I like to do with like if that elbow is like dropping and racing kind of ahead, I'll have a hitter basically have the ball in their elbow right here. It's a little big. But basically they would swing all the way through and it would help them kind of work together with it. It wouldn't allow this elbow to collapse and race ahead this way, which I think is what you're talking about, is collapsing down and going ahead like this. And when you see it in slow-mo, you wonder how they can physically do this. If that's what they're doing, that's kind of like a good one that's kind of helped, because it prevents this elbow from pinching down and collapsing and racing ahead. So that's one that I like, that we're actually going to probably be in the.
I would say that you can find, I mean, Oats Specialties makes a really squishy one. I like to use just like the little playground balls. You can get like at Walmart or anywhere else, like $3-4, kind of like a dodgeball style, kind of a softball where they can do a little bit, but not a lot. You got to kind of find that ball, but that's a really good one. And you can see where the ball drops to, can be a great indicator of what's going on with that hitter's elbow and their arm as well, in regards to connection in the swing. So yeah, that's a great drill for doing that. I know you used to do that drill every once in a while, and that was a really good one. Let's see. Next question is from TJ. If you have a player with too high of an attack angle, nearing 30 degrees consistently, any tips to help them bring that down some? I think that's a really good question. Someone who, and my guess is this person dumps the barrel really early. It's probably some wrist supination really early, and they're just dumping the barrel. That's my guess, and so I would attack that issue a little bit more, and making sure that they're staying strong through their turn, and this barrel is when you're coming through the zone, this barrel is still flat and pointing this way and hasn't been dumped too early. I see a lot when I use the K-Vest with some of my pro players. Their maximum bat speed or hand speed is really early before contact, and so what's happening is they're losing a lot of power by doing that really early. So if I have a hitter who's doing that, for me again, I'm always going to go simple first. I like to go high T drill. And I'm going to attack them high, chest level, front toss, and machine, and just force their bodies to say, okay, you know what, I can't get underneath this pitch, and I'm going to do that. And then again, I'm going to work a lot of either top hand drills or seesaw drills to be able to make sure that they're maintaining it. It's not like their wrist breaking down or something going on with that. Lex, again, and I know you've had a lot of experience working with blast motion stuff. When you have a hitter, their attack angles are getting way too high, maybe they're dropping their back shoulder. What are some ways that you have had success in lowering attack angles?
Mm-hmm. So kind of along lines what you're saying, on like a high pitch, helping them work to hit a higher, it's going to make their barrel work more flat, but helping them understand, like, if they're just going like this and like collapsing down this way, part of that is keeping connection with their barrel together, working this way instead of getting it released back there. And so doing a drill, I'll angle this down again. So going, 45-degree angle, have them open up their bat beyond their back shoulder, and their hands be so high up here, and they actually have to load down and in, and they have to keep the bat connected to their back shoulder for as long as they can. So for example, it'd be from this way, down and in, and they go to swing, and they have to stay through the ball well this way, but especially because their hips are open. So really trying to keep that connected there. That connection, I think, will help. And then also teaching them to have more of a seesaw motion. So on high pitches, having that elbow kind of work up a little bit, the back elbow to work down to help that barrel to get flatter, instead of just kind of dropping this way all the time with a low riding elbow.
Great point. So, Alexa, there's a question specifically for you. It says, Alexa, can you explain to the group about how to manage hitters' expectations on the constant improvement needed for hitting? How can players, especially young ones, not become frustrated? This one's a little loaded because I've heard her explain this before. I think the group will benefit. So a lot of pressure here, Lex. What are some? How can you explain how to manage hitters' expectations and not getting frustrated, especially for young hitters?
I think it's important that kids need to have like that high kind of goal that they want to reach. So it's good to have high expectations and high goals, but I think just kind of talking to them about like, this is it's a long process. And with hitting, you're not always unfortunately, you're not always going to be on a progression of going like this. It's just always going to get better. There's going to be plateaus, and there might even times where you feel like your swing is getting worse, because you're learning completely new movements. So teaching hitters that it's a process, that isn't always going to be always getting better, but helping them, as they understand as you start to teach them and understand their swing, and what their goal is, they're going to start to see, if you can take some video, some slight progression of them improving, right? So like if you take video, it's a great way for them to be able to see like where they started. And, 2 months ago, this was your launch position. Okay. And now you are here. You're only a little bit dropped, right? So like little things like that, celebrating the small improvements to help them be encouraged, I think will help a lot, versus like, oh, well, my launch position still isn't perfect. Well, no, you are way better than this, right? So like kind of keeping that in perspective for them and using video is a great way, I think, to do that. So
That's great. That's good. Let's see. We got a couple more questions. We got 5 minutes, so let's see what we can do here. Cam asks, what do you all do for a hitter who has front side issues, too much weight on the front side, or opening knee hip too early? So for me, there's a couple different ways that I address too much weight on the front side. For me, it's usually the case of too fast of tempo. Usually the person's stride, their load and stride is too fast. And so I can tell their tempo is really fast. And so we spend a lot of time slowing down tempo, slowing down the load, slowing down the stride, and that usually fixes it for a lot of hitters. Sometimes we still get hitters that lunge a little bit, too much weight on their front side. For me, we spend a lot of time on staying connected to the ground with their back foot and their back heel. A lot of times if you see hitters that as soon as they start striding forward, they lose their back heel starts coming off the ground and starts working forward. They're gonna lunge. They're gonna be on top. Their weight's gonna be on the front side. They're gonna lose a lot of power. We want that back heel to really get anchored into that ground and create some ground forces going forward until that foot gets down and we start really getting into that front side. And so, two things I would look at. One is their tempo. Are they moving too fast? Is that tempo just too fast and they need to slow down a little bit, come under a little bit more control? Or two, again, is their back heel coming up really early? They're losing that into the ground, or is it something else? There's a few different drills we do with that. Again, we do a drill called the slow to fast drill. And I'll tell you, at Fresno State, the way that we did that drill, we did kind of a fun drill, was called Go Dogs. And so our hitters, in their load and stride process, would say, go, and when their foot gets down, they'd say dogs really loud and fast. And I've done it with, I haven't worked with young hitters in a long time, but we used to use the term kaboom. And so I would make 10-year-olds at T-ball practice, I would have them load and stride, and they'd say ka. And when their foot hit the ground, then they would say boom. And they would try to hold that ka-boom as long as they could. So those are just a couple of the ways that I deal with front side issues. Anything you would add to that, Lex?
No, I'd say the same kind of thing. I think just helping them understand too, that you don't have to push off your back foot to get there, that it's a controlled fall going forward, right? So like when you pick up your front foot, we should have, pressure kind of on the inside of our back foot. So when we pick up that front, we should fall forward. If we have pressure on the outside of our feet really wide and I pick up my front foot, I'm actually going to go back this way, right? So teaching them to understand that if your pressure, in your feet is right, when you go to pick up, that you should fall forward. You don't have to do the extra lunging, pushing off the back foot.
That's a great thing to add that I would add to that for the question is a lot of times, especially young hitters, when they load, they go back onto their backside. And once their weight is over their backside, they've shifted their weight instead of rotated it. In order to go forward, they can't do a control fall. They have to push. So if you see this push off the backside in your stride, and it usually happens when their weight gets on their toes and the ball of their foot, and they lose the weight into their heel. They get over their backside, their weight's on their balls of their foot or toes, and they push forward. Again, like at the college level, if I see a hitter on the other team that does that and then pushes to go forward, I tell our pitching coach, hey, throw this girl change-ups, throw this guy change-ups, because it's really hard for them to be able to adjust to timing because of that pushing and lunging. So, all right, let's get to the last question of the morning, which I think is a great one from Russell. He asks for Little League, and I'm guessing he's talking about really younger hitters, maybe 5 to 10-year-olds, maybe. How much mechanics work should be worked on when you'll only have kids for a few months? I'll let you take this one. The only thing I will add to this is to get us started is for me at that age level, the thing I care about the most is for kids to have fun, and so that I'll kind of leave it at that. Lex, anything you would answer this question on? How much mechanics work should I do? I've only got them for a few months, and they're young and in little league.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say, I mean, it's going to be really hard to try to be like explaining the whole swing to them. Like they're not going to have any idea what's going on, right? So big things are just making sure that they have a good grip, have a good starting stance. Those two things can really go a long way for little kids. And then just have them do drills that will help enforce the good movements. And just have them, having them work on, getting to a good launch position, striding out, like just working on separation, that type of thing. So you can have them do those drills rather than like in practice. Like a lot of times hitting practice for little league looks like front toss for one hitter, everyone is out in the field doing defense, and it's like kind of boring, takes a long time. So instead, have some hitters split up in half. The hitter that isn't doing front toss, they're working on drills off of the tee, and then these kids are working on some body movement stuff. So kind of keeping them engaged is one thing so they don't get bored, but then just basically trick them with drills, so they you can have them work on these drills and work on these proper movements, and then they'll be kind of working on those. And you can say, hey, if you guys want to more you can hit at home, like just hitting off the tee, that's great, and then the ones that want to hit will hit, but the ones that don't want to hit, that's okay too.
So. Yep. And I would just, the only thing I would add is that at that age, it's all about teaching intent and swinging hard. I use a lot of terms like swing out of your shoes, swing for the fences. Just get them to swing hard, get them to swing fast. And there were so many great questions that came in. We couldn't get to them all this week. I'm going to save some of those questions for next week. Next week, I'll have another guest, college hitting coach with us, and Alexa. Thanks for joining us, and we'll definitely have Alexa more often as well. And thank you. Make sure you check out thehittingvault.com, and make sure you come back and visit us next week at 10 a.m. Pacific time and 1 p.m. Eastern time on Mondays for hitting Q&A at the Hitting Vault Facebook page. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and have a great week.